Well, Darin, welcome to God, Country, and the American Story. There is so much to talk with you about today as we are really upon the anniversary of one of the most horrific days in American history, 9/11. You have a new book out, Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. We're going to get into the book, and it's a memoir. It tells your story. You had a firsthand view and account of everything that happened on 9/11. You were at the World Trade Center that day, and I guess I'm just going to start by asking you to take us through that morning, what it was like for you.
Oh yeah, it was. I half jokingly say today it was a really long, hard day, but that doesn't begin to do it justice, right? It was chaotic on the at different points in my time, my morning. I was in the North Tower at one point, up in about the 30th floor or so. I was on the street level when the second plane impacted the South Tower. I was way too close when the first tower, the South Tower, collapsed. And then just the chaotic scene between the collapses of the two towers. It is. I saw the best of humanity. I saw people chipping in and citizens. I make a point in my book. There's a difference between citizens and civilians, and citizens are the ones that answer the call. Just regular people helping each other. I saw citizens band together, which was great. And then of course I saw the worst of humanity. I just saw death and destruction all around me.
You know, when did you first realize, obviously you were in one of the towers, when did you first realize that something had happened that was not an accident, right? Because I think the initial thoughts were this was an accident, right? When the first plane hit, something horrible happened. When did you first feel and know this is something much bigger?
Yeah, really soon. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't an accident. Our office was in Seven World Trade Center, so that's where I was when the whole incident started. And I remember looking up. I was right across the street from the North Tower, Tower One. Remember looking up and seeing the flames pouring out, and I didn't know what it was, Billy, but I knew it wasn't an accident. I don't know if it was training, instincts, gut, whatever. I'm also a student in history. I knew that radical Islamic terrorists had tried to take down the towers in 1993 with a car bomb. And I know that they promised that they were going to try to do it again. So I didn't know the totality of the circumstances, but I did know, I had a sense that this was an attack. And of course, when the second plane hit, I was less than 100 yards or so from the base of the South Tower at that time. And at that point, it was game on. It was time to what I say, what I call in the book, it was time to answer the bell. It was time to enter the fight.
Well, and I know you talk about this in Bury Me in a Dirty Suit, but I want to touch on some of this now, and I want people to grab that book. But you felt God speak to you during the attack, and I want you to describe that and also tell us where you were. You know, I know that you obviously have a Christian organization. We'll talk about that you're a believer. Where were you spiritually at that point, and what was it that you felt God saying to you?
Yeah, I was a follower of Jesus at the time. I was just like any believer, not as mature in my faith, and did not have had a great community around me. But obviously, in that sanctification process, I'm still growing. And but at the he spoke to me very clearly when the first tower collapsed, tower number two. I was less than 100 yards from the base of that tower, and when I looked up and I saw it buckle and start to come down, my first thought was, I'm dead. My second thought, which I believe now was the Holy Spirit, was run. And Billy, I ran. I ran as fast as I could. I was 27. I was faster then, but that cloud really took me over. But before that happened, I thought about sliding under a fire truck, getting under a fire truck that was right there on the street for cover. And I took a step in that direction, actually, and then for some reason I just kept going straight. And then as I turned the corner onto Vesey Street, there was a pickup truck connected to like a coffee cart. I thought about sliding under there for protection. And just as I went in that direction, I just kept going straight for some reason. And, within seconds, that cloud took me over and large pieces of debris were falling all around me. And then, fast forward an hour or so when I'm back at the scene after both towers had collapsed. Billy, I'm standing in that intersection and the Lord kind of put me on, you literally put me down to one knee. I saw the fire truck that I was going to get under for cover, for safety, and it was completely obliterated. I mean, it was flattened. It was the wheels were bent out. Had I been under there,
You
I
would
would
have
have
been dead had you gotten under that.
easy. And so then I went around the corner and looked for that coffee cart, that pickup truck. I couldn't even find it. There was so much destruction. So, one of the proverbs says, the heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. Has a very literal meaning for me. And I just knew at that point, I didn't know what was going to happen next, even in that day, or more or less my life. But I knew that he was with me, that he was speaking to me, and that he had a plan for me moving forward. And 3,000 people, innocent people, were erased that day, and I can't bring meaning to that. I can't describe why that happened, and why I was. I just know that that he has a mission for me, a purpose for me beyond it.
You know, going through what you went through, and obviously you were awarded for your valor, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but you ran, and obviously you believe it was God that was leading you away from those areas, giving you the instincts to know where to go. What made you go back? You went back. What did you do when you went back? Talk a little bit about the choices you made in the hours that followed the attack.
Yeah, the time period between the two towers collapsing was chaotic. I picked up a woman whose femur was sticking out of her leg, and put her in a shopping cart and helped push her down the street to an ambulance. I saw an ambulance just hit a pedestrian because the pedestrian was kind of walking across the street, kind of like a zombie. Right? It was just terrible. But I kept going back. I found myself, Billy, I say in the book, I'm kind of young and dumb, right? But I found myself at the same intersection, almost the same point, when the first tower collapsed. I find myself back there for when the second tower started to collapse. I managed to escape that one as well. I went back, went back after the second. And to answer your question, I don't ever remember consciously making a decision to keep returning to what I call the battlefield, to the site. All I know is that something within me that's not of me, if that makes sense. I wasn't mustering up my own courage, but perfect love casts out all fear, and I experienced that. And I was able to return with some of my colleagues, with who I call my guys, some other agents I worked with. And gosh, after the both towers collapsed, we went back and we found a fire truck that was undamaged and not being used, because all the other, professional firefighters were trapped. They were gone. They were in the towers. They were in the rubble. And the four of us just figured out how to hook up a hose to that fire truck, for example. And I'm holding the hose, and these guys are throwing levers back and forth and turning knobs, and all of a sudden water comes out, and the four of us become this amateur hour firefighting team. And we just decided to start putting out all the car fires, because, Billy, everything was on fire. Cars were on fire, ambulances, trucks, gas cans, gas tanks in the cars popping off and blowing off. And we just decided this was our battlefield, this one little intersection. And we chose to enter into that fight. And we just started putting out car fires, one at a time. And that was just the next step for us.
Well, you were given the Secret Service Medal of Valor, which obviously, and you telling this story, we know this was well-deserved, going back and fighting to help people. That's the highest award for bravery displayed by public safety officers. And when you received that award, what was that like in light of the heaviness of what you faced and saw and experienced and did, and then to have sort of that achievement after? What was that like for you?
Honestly, it was mixed. That's a good question. I haven't thought of that in a while. I, like anyone who received something like that, and many of us did. I was by far not the only. Um, it's a mixed emotions, right? I felt like I didn't deserve it. I didn't earn it. I much rather would have, acknowledgments go out to, the 422 first responders who died in New York City on 9/11. May we forever honor and remember them. And that's part of the objective of this book, was to honor the greater law enforcement community, and specifically the 422 that died. So yeah, it was. I mean, it's the award sat on the floor in my closet for many years, because I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I'm more comfortable with it now. If you had asked me that question 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even answered the question.
Well, you dedicated the book to, obviously, to those first responders. And again, the book is Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. And, I want to talk about the book in a moment, but I have to ask you this because you saw, as you said at the top of this interview, I mean, you saw the best of humanity and the worst of humanity. You saw true
Mm.
evil. You lived firsthand. We all live this history, this moment in history that happened in real time, but you were there on site, experiencing it, fighting the battles that followed it. How did this event change you as a person, spiritually,
Mm.
emotionally?
That's a great question. It gave me in time, it was not right away. It gave me in time a greater sense of mission, a greater sense of purpose, meaning in life. I searched for that on September 12th. I was sitting on my sofa in Hoboken, New Jersey, where my apartment was, and I was crying. I was praying. I was trying to figure out what is this all about and what's next for me. And I said to the Lord, "Look, I should have died yesterday at least twice. I understand that, but I didn't. You must have a plan for me. You must have a mission for me. I'm a good soldier. What are my marching orders?" And so I've just taken. Now he did not answer that right away. It would take years for that process to evolve, but. What he put on my heart was a mission, which is the heart and soul of this book, is to inspire and equip people to live a life of greater purpose. That you and I are here not by accident. We are made and created as a masterpiece for this time, for this place, for a purpose. And that's what I want to talk with people and encourage people to do.
I mean, there's so many times, and we talk a lot on this show about history and faith and how history and faith come together and how, God, country, and the American story, how faith has shaped this country from its founding down the line. And here you have a situation where faith was very much an impetus for you in how you survived the event, how you dealt with the event in real time, and then the promise you made to God after in that connection, right, to him and saying, put me where you want me, help me do what you want me to do. I think it's so interesting looking at all of this. When you think through the experience and sitting on this, I know this book is a book that when you write a memoir like this, it's not something you write in 5 minutes. It's something that takes years to put together. And I would imagine you spent many years pondering this. Why now? Why write this book now?
Right. Well, I've been writing this book for 10 or 15 years in my head. It's a story that needs to be shared. I mean, like you said, we're talking historical reference, right? It is, we're about 24 years now. It is a historical event that really binds us together as a nation. Like if you are of age, sometimes I'll speak to high school and college kids, and I'm giving them a history lesson, right? But if you're of age, you and I and everyone else, they know exactly where they were when this happened, what they were doing, and so I thought it was time to share that story. I could not have done this years ago. I wasn't prepared to do it. But I had a mission. I was a Secret Service agent for 25 years. I had a mission that I felt like I needed to accomplish and finish, and that was a dutiful career, a loyal career of doing good work for the U.S. Secret Service. And once I felt like that mission was complete, I was of age. I was able to retire. I started thinking about what was next, and it was clear and obvious. I could have kept being a Secret Service agent. I could have stayed several more years and been fine. But there was an itch that needed to be scratched. I wasn't running from one thing. I was being called to another. I was running to something, not away from something. And that this is part of my purpose. This is part of my mean. This is my new mission in life is to, and that's the organization I've created, Fierce Faith, and this is where I'm going. And it's a wild ride.
Yeah, and I want to get into the issue of evil in a moment, but talk about Fierce Faith a little bit, what you're doing, what you're hoping to accomplish specifically, who you're serving through that organization.
Right now, it's a public speaking business slash ministry where I'm doing corporate keynote addresses. I am doing keynote addresses in faith based areas as well. So it's a two pronged approach there. And look, I'm giving people history, but I'm also teaching. I'm teaching about resilience. I'm teaching how to rise to the occasion when there's no script. Right. I'm teaching what it looks to have grit and resilience, not just in huge huge cataclysmic events like 9/11, but also in day-to-day life, in the corporate setting, and also in the faith-based setting. There's even deeper gold to mine there.
Yeah, no, and so many people need these messages today. I mean, they're craving these faith messages, and it's incredible to watch. When you go back to that day and you think about the issue of evil, watching evil, there are a few things I can think of, events that we've lived through that are as evil, especially in this country, as what we saw on that day. How did it shift or inform or even transform your concept of evil? It's one thing, we talked about God and your connection to God there, but the other side of it, how did it shape your perspective on that?
I'm a father of four sons. And my oldest is almost 20, and my youngest is 12. And we've had this discussion, and I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy as a parents to have this discussion. Evil exists, period. And sometimes all of us, one day, all of it will be called to what I call answer the bell. Will be called on that day, for example, the United States was sucker punched, right? And people answered the bell in so many ways, whether they were donating, whether they were contributing volunteer hours, whether they were going to New York City, or whether they were deploying downrange overseas, right, to make sure it never happened again. And so I instruct my boys, and my wife is with me, that look, evil exists. And as I say in the book, evil doesn't stop when you ask nicely. Therefore, if you want to be a man that, as Teddy Roosevelt once said, a man that rides the storm and quells the thunder, brings peace and stability into those times and into those spaces. Evil needs to be confronted. And I can think of no greater way, and that is, as a Christian, that is bringing the light into the darkest places, and that's what I've committed my life to the rest of my professional career moving forward.
Yeah, and when we talk about events like this, a lot of times, we from a Christian perspective, a spiritual perspective, right? A lot of times we think it's all about the here and now, what we're seeing in front of us, but there is an entire, what scripture talks about, for those who are not familiar. It talks about a spiritual battle in Ephesians 6, that there is good and evil, and there's a fight going on that we can't always see. And so I don't want to oversimplify things, but we sometimes watch that pour over into our lives and into our culture. And an event like this, the level of evil it takes, you feel that very viscerally. Even now, thinking about, as you were saying, where I was, what I was doing, what I was feeling, it brings those emotions back, because it was so otherworldly and so evil to watch it unfold. How have you journeyed through the aftermath of processing all of that, not just physically because you were there, but spiritually, and gotten, I guess, worked through it in a healthy way over the years?
Right, that's a great question. For me, I was the Secret Service agent, and come September 12th, our world was turned upside down. Right, I mean, the operational tempo just increased by fourfold, fivefold. So I felt like for the next 2 or 3 years, I was just on a treadmill that wouldn't stop professionally. And so I really didn't have time. And looking back now, I didn't have time to process and think and kind of heal. About the 10-year anniversary, Billy, I just started feeling the nudgings of the Lord that I needed to start sharing my story, sharing my experience. And a good friend of mine, who just a person of wise counsel, he said to me, "You would be ashamed. It would be a shame if you did not use this story, this experience, to somehow share Christ through people." He said, "I don't know what that looks like, but you need to think about that and pursue that." And you know what? Right at the 10-year anniversary, maybe a dozen people in the world knew my story. I just couldn't do
Wow.
it, couldn't share it. And then at the 10-year anniversary, I spoke to a men's group at a church. I was encouraged to do so, and that started my journey. And so it's been about 14 years now. Literally thousands of people have heard my story. This book is a continuation of that. And Billy, the amount of healing, personal healing, that I went through once I started sharing, and once I started bringing some kind of beauty out of the ashes, some kind of light out of that awful darkness. For me personally, it blew the doors off my faith. My faith just exploded in a good way.
So, final question for you, and I could talk to you forever about this because there's so much to it, but when all is said and done, somebody picks up Bury Me in a Dirty Suit, they read the book, they put it down, what do you want them thinking and feeling?
That they were made for this time, for this place, for something greater than themselves. The title of the book is kind of catchy, but it's a sentence I uttered on September 12th. What happened on September 11th? At the end of the day, I finally rendezvoused with a bunch of other agents about 30 or 40 blocks north. And I walk into this huge room, and me and a bunch of other guys were just all torn up. We're beaten, we're bloodied. My pants were like 3 inches shorter because they kept catching fire. My shoes were malformed from the heat, and we were just all torn up. And then on the other side of the room, I looked and I was baffled because I saw another group of colleagues in clean suits, right? And that it just struck me. And I don't say that to to cast any stones at anyone. I'm just using that as an illustration. The next day, I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, there was clean suits and there was dirty suits. Courage is a choice, Billy. And some people entered in, some people entered into the fight. And so I sat there on my couch and I was praying to the Lord. And I said, Lord, when you spared me, and I want to spend the rest of my days getting my suit dirty for you, getting my suit dirty in the name of Jesus, whatever that may be. And each one of us, so that's the point of the book, is each one of us is created for an arena, for a fight, for a battle in which we can bring light into the darkness. And that's called getting your suit dirty. And as I said that prayer, it just rolled off my tongue at the end. I said, Lord, when you take me out of this world and into the next, bury me in a dirty suit. And 24 years later, that becomes the title of my book. And that's the heart of the message.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing what you went through and writing this book. Again, the book is Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. Appreciate you joining God, Country, and the American Story today.
Billy, it was great to be here. Thank you so much.